This is one of the first bases I ever built. It's serial number 3, and since I've built that, I've changed the way I do things, and I would like to bring this up to my modern standards. So what I've got here is one of the more recent bases I've built, so I can kind of show how things have changed since then. So let's take a look. So first thing is the neck profile. This was hand carved, and while I got everything pretty smooth, the profile is not really where I want it to be. Very D-shaped, very fat, round neck. This is more of a C-shaped neck, and that's where I want to be. Additionally, I have a big flat spot here where I was not very precise as I brought it into the neck pocket. I did not flow that shape well into the shape of the body itself. I want to go ahead and clean that up. Next, I started profiling the back of the neck pocket to kind of make a smoother transition into the neck. You can kind of see that here. I'm not sure how visible that is on camera, but I want to do the same thing here. Finally, we've got the control cavity cover is attached via screws, but these days what I usually do is magnets. It's a smoother profile, you can pop it off very easily, and I like that a whole lot better. So what I want to do is build a new control cavity cover, do that with magnets, fix this rim a little bit, add a little bit of bevel, and then fix the next profile. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is we want to redo that neck profile. And this is the machine I have built to help me do neck profiles. It basically does that sort of straight run along the neck and make sure that we've got a nice, consistent, straight profile. Works by, you strap the neck blank in with these brackets. There's a stop here that the fretboard goes against, so you know where you are. You can center it up with these adjustment screws, and then as you're cutting, you may adjust in or out to sort of get everything clean. When you flip this over, the two cogs give a nice uniform rotation here, and then you can slide back and forth with the router bit making the cut. Positive stops keep you from going too far in either direction, and that's how it works. If you've checked out my time-lapse video of the charity neck build, it's the same kind of thing, just a smaller jig. So the problem here is that fretboard on the older guitar doesn't have a place I can put up against here. So it is more of a Fender style neck. The headstock is straight. It's got a Fender style nut on it. So there's no end of the fretboard that can go here, or at least the end is farther down the line than where this is right now. So I needed to build a new one of these. After pondering over this last night, I decided that making a whole new one of these shuttles is really, really stupid. So what I'm going to do is I've taken a little heat and I pulled off the stop block that used to rest right here. I'm going to cut a slot in here, a little bit bigger than 1/8 of an inch. So when I'm right up against this line, even with the existing nut and slot, it will kind of rest a little bit inside of this beam here. And I can do my profile using this one. Then I'll make an attachable stop block that I can use when I have a tilt back headstock. Off camera, I cut a slot in here. If I was doing this from scratch, didn't have all these blocks glued in place, I probably just would have used the cross-cut sled for my table saw and got myself a nice clean straight slot here. With all this stuff installed on here, that's just sketchy, and nah, I didn't want to do that. Thankfully, I have a couple of blocks in place here. I was able to just put the saw up against the blocks, cut down. All I needed was really about a little over 1/8 of an inch to hold the height of the nut in there. So now I've got my first cut. I'm going to do a second one, about 1/8 of an inch away from the original cut. This side of it actually doesn't need to be very precise because we'll put the nut right up against this line here. And then I'll clean out the waste with like chisel or something. Perfect. Before I do my cut, I raise the router bit so that it is close to the edge. And then basically I kind of run up and down each side, eyeballing it, flip it over, eyeball it again. Sort of make sure that I've got an even depth here before I make my cut. Now, as I make the cut, I may adjust this in or out, but usually I get pretty darn close just by sort of eyeballing it before I start cutting at all. Next, I'll drop the height a little bit on the router bit again so that I'm not actually catching on any wood as I spin around. You don't want to take off big chunks, just sort of slowly work your way around until you get to your final profile. Okay, here's where I start kind of making my adjustments on the side to side. So here we've got maybe 3/32 of a reveal between where the fretboard starts, front line starts, and here it's a little bit more. So what we want to do is shift this that way just a hair to even this out. And you'll notice I'm cutting like this instead of going like this. When I go like this, you end up with you can end up with a lot of tear out stuff, but when you cross cut, it's usually a pretty clean cut. So again, we want to loosen this just a little bit. Crank this guy. Do the same thing over here. And then make sure that we're snug. Now, usually after I've done one of those, I'll go ahead and make a pass with that adjusted because there's going to be some cut towards the side that we move towards before I crank the router bit up again a little more. Okay, and here we're coming a little bit too close for the fretboard for my taste. So we've actually moved a little bit too far in this direction. You can see the other side, we're not nearly there. So let's go ahead and back that off a bit. This is a little bit different than kind of how we would see it on a fresh neck blank because it's already kind of carved, but the technique is similar. So here's where we're going to stop with the machine. And the roundness in the profile, sort of the fatness, is pretty similar as you get towards the headstock. But we did take off some of that fatness down near the neck pocket. And the rest of this we'll end up doing with some carving tools or a little bit of sanding on the sanding table. You can see here that while we thought we were probably pretty straight along this back, we probably had a little bit of a hump here. All right, now we're gonna carve away sort of the extra that I've got here on the heel. The neck's actually pretty close, so I'm not gonna mess with that until I hit it with the sander. But this, I've drawn a line where the neck pocket is, also on the sides, which you probably can't see from this angle. And I wanna carve this in and blend it more with the neck pocket. I put a little masking tape here, usually where the machine has cut away, just so that if I skip or I lose control a little bit, it's got a little bit of protection. And this is just gonna be straight old-fashioned, you know, rasps to tear into the wood and sort of shape it as I would like. We use one of these to sort of get the bulk of the stuff away. I think that is gonna get us where we want to go. Now we're back over at the sanding table, and we're gonna use like some 80 grit to kind of finish off these really rough spots here around here and smooth these transitions between where I've hand carved and where the machine carved. And then we'll use some 120 to smooth that out even further, and then after that I will probably switch to hand sanding. Now next steps, I'm going to hand sand to about 240 or 220. Got some 150 here. That will sort of smooth out the rest of the lumps. Ooh, got one right there I need to take care of. Probably need to do that with the sander. And then I'll keep working my way up. Probably ultimately get to 320. By that time, though, you're not really shaping anymore. You're just kind of polishing, looking for scratches. So now this feels pretty good, nice and smooth. But we want to do sort of the next layer is we're going to spray it with some water. Let the grain rise a little bit, and then when we next hit it with the sandpaper, it'll knock off all that raised grain. Like now, this is all ragged feeling. As soon as you get some water on it, let that soak for just a couple moments here, and then go back at it. Use a fresh piece of sandpaper. All right, now that we've gotten through all our sanding, most of which we did off camera because sanding is boring, we have our new, more modern, or modern for me, neck profile. When we flip over the body, so gracefully, we now blend nicely into the neck pocket, and this neck is ready to get some oil. So we kind of need to match the finish that's already on here, and I am mostly sure that what I used was the Watco tung oil. Love this stuff, been using it since very early in my guitar building endeavors. It will get glossier as you put more coats on it, but let's go ahead and do this. I won't use real tung oil. It takes forever to dry. So this is a blend, and it is, you know, wipe it on, let it soak for a little bit, and then we'll come back and get rid of the extra. And then we'll let that set, and then we'll rinse and repeat every day or so until we get the level of gloss to match what is on the rest of the neck. Now, as we get a few coats on, I will probably come along and do like a real thin, like a 600 grit kind of sand in between to get a nice smooth finish. All right, now we'll let that sit for probably 10 or 15 minutes and then just wipe off with another clean towel and buff it. When you have one of these oils, make sure you put it out someplace where it can dry and it's not going to ignite. It's been about 20 minutes. I've wiped down the excess oil and give it kind of a buff. You know, make sure you get around sort of any places you might have touched and spread it about. I forgot how crazy the curl was on this neck. That is just beautiful stuff. So we're going to let this dry for about 24 hours and keep applying coats until we match the sheen from the rest of the neck, which is not super shiny, so we're not too far away. Probably 2-3 more coats should be quite nice.